Welcome back, everyone. You are in for a treat with this session titled Indigenous Rights, Securing the Future of Biodiversity. This session is co-curated with Generation Climate, which are 18 youth activists from around the world that have worked with us, the program team, to prepare the program of these 9 days, and this is one of these sessions. So, the trees will be listening carefully while we hear what our speakers have to say, but please join me in welcoming Lindsay Levin, who is the CEO of Leaders Quest and the curator of TED Countdown. Lindsay.
Well, I'm thrilled to be, this is a high point for me of this week. I'm thrilled to be here with you all for this wonderful session. Delighted to be joining people online as well as in the audience, and I'm going to invite my colleagues to come and join me and take a seat, please. Hindou here. Yeah, if you want to sit over there. Yes, and Cassidy over there. Whoa. So, what a pleasure to be having this conversation at the end of a week where we've seen at long last an important announcement, $1.7 billion of commitment to support the work of Indigenous peoples in protecting and preserving lands and forests across the world, something that you may well choose to comment on in the conversation. So let me just welcome our 4 wonderful panelists from different parts of the world, all of them environmental activists and activists for Indigenous peoples, their own communities, but also across the globe. So on my left, Hindou Umaru Ibrahim from Chad. Welcome, Hindou. Next to her, Cassidy Kramer from Alaska. Cassidy, delighted to have you here. Alice Pataxo. Welcome, Alice. Delighted to have you here with your translator, Audrey. Thank you, Audrey, for being with us. And joining us online, Nina Guelinga. Nina, I know you're here, I think, with your son as well. You've sprained your ankle, so can't be with us today. So thank you so much for being with us. Wonderful to be here. What I want to do is invite each of the 4 of you to kick the session off by sharing a little bit about who you are, the place and people that you come from, and what is most important for us to know about your work. So, Hindou, let's start with you.
Thank you very much. Hi. It's so good to be in this special room. Thanks for taking us in our ecosystem with the smile and with the tree. So my name is Hindou Umaru Ibrahim. I am from a Oumarou people, those who are living in the Sahel regions. My people come from Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria, Central African Republic. But of course, because of the colonization, I found myself born in Chad by nationality. But of course, the rest of my relatives are around all those lands. So my people are a cattle herders, nomadic, still moving from one place to another one to find water and pastures. And when you are coming from these nomadic communities, with all the climate change impact, we are experiencing it in our daily life. And this is also the reason of my engagement, the reason of my life, my work. So I do the work in my community to help to preserve our land, our territories, our resources, because those are the ones who give us all what we need. All what's surrounding us here, the trees, those are the life, giving us food, medicine, and so on. And I have to connect it with what is happening at the international level. So this is my second part of work, because at the international level, they're taking the decision without knowing what is happening on the ground, and I cannot allow them just take the decision in our behalf that can harm us. So this is why I'm also involved in this international level to make the bridge, make them understand what is happening, and make my peoples also understand who is taking the decision in their behalf.
Wonderful, Hindou. Thank you. And Cassidy, you come from a very different part of the world. Tell us a little bit about your work and where you come from.
Yeah, I'm Cassidy Kramer. It's so nice to be joining you all today with Hindou, Nina, and Alice. Yeah, I come from Arctic Alaska. My home is actually 26 miles above the Arctic Circle. And we are the Inuit people, but my tribe specifically is Inupiaq. And we also have a direct connection to the land. We live off the land. We've been living off the land for years and years, relying on it and just in connection with it. And so, of course, over the past decade or more, there's been changes that people have noticed, that hunters have noticed, and I personally have been hunting for about a decade, since I was old enough. And so I've seen these changes myself, and I've heard changes from other hunters and elders and from my dad. And so yeah, my work is basically sharing what I've seen, but also trying to get Indigenous and more specifically Inuit people's voices to the discussions and to the decision-making table.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So Alice, over to you.
Eu sou Alice Pataxó, eu sou da comunidade Craveiro, no extremo sul da Bahia, no Brasil, Nordeste. E eu vivo muito na beira do mar e no meio da mata. É uma característica do meu povo, que é um dos primeiros povos a ser vítima da colonização no Brasil.
So I'm Alice Pataxó, I'm from Pataxós people. I live in a village called Craveiro, which is located in Bahia State in Brazil. And my village is located between the forest and the mar and the sea, so it's a particularity of people.
E assim como as meninas, né, o meu povo também sofre diversos impactos com o aquecimento global.
We need to speak up a little bit, both of you. Thank you, both of you.
E assim como as meninas, o meu povo também sofre muito com essas relações e o aquecimento global no seu território. O avanço do nível do mar é uma coisa que nos preocupa muito, assim como a derrubada da nossa biodiversidade, já que a gente vive num dos biomas mais castigados do Brasil, que de 12 se tornou 7% da Mata Atlântica.
And as the speaker here, we are also suffering a lot of consequences of the
Can you
climate
speak
crisis.
up, Audrey? Do we need to do anything with the sound? Yeah, let's just take a moment to get the sound right. Great.
And she was saying that as the speakers here, she is living also in a place which is suffering a lot for the consequences of the global warming and the climate crisis, and they are mainly preoccupied with the destruction of their forests and also of the increase of the level of the sea.
Relação muito forte, não só de vivência, de resistência naquele território, mas também de ancestralidade.
And we have a strong connection with the land, not just for struggling for the right of the land, but also for our ancestrality.
Thank you very much. So let's bring Nina in. Nina, if you'd like to share with us.
Hi y'all. Thank you so much for this space, and I'm so sorry I couldn't join you in person today. I was really looking forward to it. Well, my name is Nina Gualinga, and I am from the Quechua people of Sarayaco in the Ecuadorian Amazon on my mother's side. And well, when I was a little girl living in my community, Sarayaco, which is very far away from any cities, towns, electricity. It's a 25-minute plane ride to the community, or a day by car and canoe. So that, this was like the place that I grew up in, not very aware of extractivism or climate change or any of these things. But when I was about 8-9 years old, an oil company came to our community in search for oil. And my community decided that we did not want to have oil extraction on our lands. But the oil company disrespected our decision and entered our territory with violence and with the support of the Ecuadorian government that sent heavily armed military forces to our community. Family members, community members were threatened at gunpoint, harassed, tortured. They cut down sacred trees that hold the spirits of our ancestors. They buried 1,400 kilograms of high explosive pentalites. They threatened to rape girls in our community. The government painted up us as terrorists, guerrillas, a group of a group of guerrilla that's against the country's development, or so-called development. And basically everyone in the community organized. And I think it was a very wise decision of the women to say, to sort of like take the lead and say that we're gonna fight, but we're gonna do it peacefully. We're gonna be out there in the forest, we're gonna put our bodies on the line, but we're not gonna do this with violence. So the community created peace camps out in the forest in our territory, which is very vast, big. And finally, after months being out in the forest, both children, everyone was involved, children, elders, young people, pregnant women, women with babies, and we managed to successfully kick out the oil companies and the military, and then took the Ecuadorian government to court in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. But basically, this is what started my journey and my work. And I don't see myself as an activist because this is so personal. This affects me directly, my child, my family. So, when you're home, when your entire existence, when your family is in danger and under direct threat, it's hard. It just doesn't make justice to it to call myself an activist.
Right.
I'm defending my home and my family. But, so this is where it started, and as I grew older, I started realizing and seeing that this was not only happening in my community, this was not only happening in the neighboring communities in Ecuador, this was happening in Brazil, in Colombia, in Peru, this was happening in the United States, Canada, all over the world. And that's how I, started connecting the impact of extractivism on territory and indigenous peoples, but also globally, what that is causing climate change.
Nina, thank you, Nina. What a wonderfully powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I want to, one of the things I'm hearing here at COP26, and I don't know whether you'll agree with this, is that this year there is a different level of engagement around the role of Indigenous peoples and a different level of appreciation that is starting to emerge. And I wonder if you would each just share with us if there was something that every one of us, whether we're listening virtually or we're here in the audience, could take away with us, where we deeply appreciate, a shift, if you like, in our own mindset, heart set. What would that be? Hindou, let's start with you.
Sure, thank you. You say this COP changed differently. So what I wanted you to take, it is to take that Indigenous peoples, we are not a victim. We refuse to be a victim. We are a solutions. We are the future. Indigenous peoples, as we said, even we are 5% of the world's population with all my relatives here, but we protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. So that gives us a right to sit in the tables and take decisions. What I wanted you to get with our solutions that are not coming from technology or science or modern science that they are calling it, but our solution coming from thousands of years of living in harmony with the nature. My grandmother, I used to say that, is my best app ever. She never went to school. She do not know what is a car. My grandmother never utilized any of these development things. She did not know how to read or write. She did not know what we are talking about, COP or whatever. But she is expert. She is PhD plus on agriculture because she knows which kind of crops that they have to plant during the dry season. She knows where she can get medicine, if her grandchild are sick just by going in the forest and taking the herbs somewhere. She knows if it's going to rain because we are nomadic. We don't have a close or sitting houses. And I also think, like my sister here, in the ice, it is the same. But she knows exactly if it's going to be sun or rain or cold to just to keep her family safe. So she is not expert in only environment or agriculture. She's expert in so many ways. Not because she didn't went to school that we cannot recognize her. So we are the solutions. We are the future. So please take that. We are not the victim. We refuse to be the victim. And that's why they have to consider us as part of the solution, as part of the decision making everywhere, from international to the national level.
Beautifully put, Hindou. Thank you so much. Thank you. Cassidy, what would you add to that?
I think that's so well put. And you know, as you are getting us to the table, I would say that we need to value human relationships as well. Leave the business out of it. This is about relationships and human connection. I think that is one of the most important things, because you know, as Indigenous people, we don't only connect with the nature, but we also connect with each other. These aren't business interactions. These are personal interactions, and it should be personal. So what I would say is, don't just use us for our knowledge, but actually try and build a relationship with us, because that's how we're going to find a solution, is through human connection, human relationship.
Thank you. Thank you. Alice, over to you. What do you want us to deeply appreciate and take away from this conversation?
Eu penso exatamente assim, né? É muito mais do que essa relação científica, é uma questão ancestral. E que passa muito por essa conexão que a gente tem de intimidade e de necessidade de ter a natureza ao nosso lado.
I also believe that it's not just a scientific relationship. We have also an ancestral connection with nature, and it's much more than that.
Então, são relações muito importantes para a gente, que as pessoas precisam entender. Além do mais, não é só histórico o fato de que indígenas, cada vez mais número de indígenas participam da COP, mas o fato de que a gente está aqui como pessoas que estão prontas para estar dentro dessas mesas de discussões, como a colega disse, mas principalmente tomando essas decisões também, porque nós somos partes mais afetadas por tudo isso.
So, and we are here also to share these relations that we have with the nature, and for us to be in the COP is also taking part of this decision-making process, and we think it's all right to be here, and also now the new generation, we are ready to be here.
Essa luta de cuidar do meio ambiente não é só nossa, não precisa ser. E a gente começa a entender isso muito bem nessa COP. Cada vez mais a juventude se apresentando, estando aqui e preocupada com o futuro, né? Então, que isso aconteça cada vez mais e que a gente tenha outros reflexos disso lá na frente.
And taking care of the nature is not just our responsibility, it's a responsibility of all of us. And being here in the COP and meeting so much young people with this preoccupation is what we believe is necessary to do some alliance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nina, over to you.
Well, first of all, Hindou, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that, just underlining what Hindou said, the resilience of Indigenous peoples, the resilience of people that live off the land, and despite all the violence, despite all the displacement, colonization, racism that we as Indigenous peoples have experienced and continue experiencing today, there is so much love and power. And that is the one thing that I am taking with me from this COP and previous COPs, is the power of the people. Because at every single COP that I have been to, and it's been a few now, I when the COP is over, I continue to feel more and more disappointed. But what inspires me and what keeps me going is the power and the resilience of people. And that I know that out there in the communities, out there in the forests, everywhere, there are Indigenous people leading this fight, really, because Indigenous peoples are the real climate leaders. It's not the so-called leaders here at the COP, the people out there.
Nina, can I ask you, as somebody who's been to many of these meetings, do you feel any kind of a change is underway?
Yes, I do. I think that change is going to come from the people. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in a moment, we're going to turn to questions. So for those of you watching online, I'd encourage you to enter questions into the chat. But before we do that, I want to just do one more round and invite you to each share if there was something that you could, especially as we go into the second week of COP, but also beyond that, if there was something more that you could kind of magically change, what would that be? What's the next real step up that you would like to see happening in the world in terms of your roles? Hindou.
That's true. I teach in your question because I give two.
Go, please.
So the first one that I wanted to see change coming from your first introductions. So for the first time, because Indigenous peoples asked for the direct access funding for so long, but finally we got 1.7 billion. That's really fantastic. We celebrate that. What I wanted to have, how those commitments can be changed with the cash in the tables that can flow directly to our peoples, to Nina's peoples, to my sisters here peoples, to my communities back home who cannot fill an Excel sheet just to do the reporting on the money, or who cannot do a big page of report. So how this money can go there. I don't want them to repeat the same history of commitment. When we have the 100 billion commitment for developing countries, we still do not have the 100 billions in the tables. It's supposed to be since last year, 2020, but we still don't have this cash. So it's nice really to have this commitment. So I wanted them to put this cash in the tables, going to our communities, not ending to the meeting. We wanted this money serve for the real reason, to change the life of the peoples who are already impacted by the climate, but who have the real solutions to help us, the nature. The second thing that I teach on is, I wanted from here that the game change. All the time, those negotiations, it is a country-driven. It is the delegate of the countries that can sit in the tables and decide. But they are not serious. If they all recognize from biodiversity, climate change, Indigenous peoples protect 80% of the world's biodiversity, but they decide for us what we should do, I think they are in the wrong way. So they must open, because negotiation is done since we have the Paris Agreement. Now it is implementation, and we don't have time. Our peoples are dying. We cannot accept. So we wanted to be sitting in the tables and give them the guidance. We are there to give them the capacity building, not to receive the capacity building from them. They have to change it.
Right. So we're going to need to see real wisdom in how those monies are applied and distributed, real thoughtfulness and a shift in the way we would go about that. Cassidy, what would you like to share?
Oh, you put everything so well. But yeah, no, I agree. We need to be, at the table, and we need to be making the decisions because we have the answers. We have been a people who have adapted in our lands for thousands of years, and we will be able to get through this. And we are the experts, so.
I mean, Cassidy, maybe to bring to life for people a little bit in your community, if we think about, for example, this funding, could you describe some of what you would like to see, what you'd like to have the ability to fund in terms of the work that a community like yours undertakes? So bring that to life for us. What does it actually look like on the ground?
I would say that it's gathering, I mean, and they already are gathered, but youth, Indigenous voices and elders, and getting the knowledge from the elders and mixing it with the youth. I think that is so important, and that will that'll just help us find solutions and to get through this as a people.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Alice, over to you.
Bom, eu acho que a gente não precisa de outro tratado de Paris, a gente precisa de ações imediatas, e é isso que está faltando aqui.
I think what we need are concrete action, and I think it's what is missing here.
Então, que isso comece a mudar agora, né? E que esse dinheiro, especificamente falando disso, seja designado para coisas realmente importantes dentro das comunidades indígenas. Não só para que a gente tenha esse fundo, mas para que a gente tenha realizações, a gente quer ver coisas concretas.
We need that this money which is destinated to the community come directly to our community so we can realize our own action. We need to see some concrete projects to be done with this money.
Além de que a gente não pode pensar em um único projeto para isso. Nós somos muitos povos e muitas diversidades. Existem diferentes problemas em comunidades indígenas. E isso precisa ser respeitado nesse processo também.
And it's difficult to talk about a unique project for each community because we are a lot of people and we all have our own necessity. So we have to consider the diversity of the people and the diversity of the project as well.
E sinceramente, se eu pudesse fazer algo quanto a isso, a primeira coisa que eu penso assim eu levaria essas pessoas que organizam tudo isso, que vivenciam isso e planejam, mas não executam, para viver um pouco das nossas vidas e entender o sofrimento que a gente passa dentro das comunidades.
And if I could do something to help the change to happen, I will bring all the authority or decision maker to our community so they can really see the way we are living and when we are needed.
Porque é assim que as pessoas mudam de opinião, é assim que as pessoas realmente se preocupam com as coisas, quando elas sentem na pele o que está acontecendo.
Because I think that it's experiencing what we are living that people will really realize what we are going through.
Alice, could you again bring that to life for us? So if you could bring all of us to see how you're living, to see your community, what would we experience? What would we see? What would you want to show us?
Eles vão entender que o que acontece lá é muito mais sério do que só uma invasão de território, né? A gente está vivendo uma seca, a gente está vivendo o avanço do nível do mar e a gente perde tudo o que a gente planta e o que a gente tem para comer. E não só isso, né? São diversas relações que abalam a nossa relação emocional, nossa estrutura quanto pessoa, que depende daquilo não só para se alimentar, mas para viver bem em harmonia com tudo que a gente tem.
If we could bring these people to our community, they will see that the problem is much more serious than they are thinking, because it's not just our forest which is being destroyed, it is also the level of the sea which is going through our territory. We are losing also our animals with the forest destruction and the water contamination. So I think they will feel that we don't have access anymore of what is really necessary for us.
E meu povo é o povo da onça. E a minha mãe sofre muito hoje pelo fato de que eu não tive o contato que ela teve com essas espécies no nosso território. E hoje eu sofro sabendo que os meus filhos também não vão ter essa oportunidade, porque eu estou vendo que o mundo não está cuidando daquilo que a gente tem e daquilo que precisa existir para que o mundo continue girando como sempre foi, né? Bem e com todo esse sistema funcionando.
And my people is called the people from the jaguar, and my mom is really sad because I never get the opportunity to be in contact with this animal. And I also feel really sad because probably my child and the future generation won't be able to meet with this sacred animal for us. So we are also suffering some emotional problem due to the loss of our way of life in harmony with nature.
Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you. Nina, let's bring you into the conversation.
Yes, so there are a few things, but I would start with respecting Indigenous land, stopping the criminalization of Indigenous land defenders, because every week land defenders are killed. I think there was a report that was released just recently by Global Witness, and since the Paris Agreement, over 1,000 land defenders have been killed. That's just the ones that have been reported. And so many deaths of Indigenous land defenders and land defenders in general are not reported. And our lives are tied to the land. So we need governments to respect Indigenous people's lands, respect our right to self-determination, because as Hindou was saying earlier, Indigenous peoples have been living in harmony with the land for generations and generations. And it has been proven that Indigenous peoples are the best ones to take care of those lands. So we need to be able to decide over our ancestral lands and decide how we want to live there. Decide what development or progress means for us. And development and progress for Indigenous peoples does not necessarily mean does not necessarily have the same meaning as for governments, corporations, obviously, and countries, governments. So I think that is key. That's the change that I would like to see, is Indigenous people's right to self-determination. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. So I want to bring the audience in now and invite some questions. I'm going to start with any questions from our online audience. I'm not sure who in the team has got any of those for us. And then others from the audience in a moment can put their hands up. Have we got any online questions first? No? Okay, so folks from the audience, raise your hand, a mic will find you. Let's bring you in, please, to the conversation. Can be for anybody on the panel, maybe a particular thought you want to share. I want to encourage people not to be shy. Please, go for it.
Thanks, Lindsay. I first wanted to recognize that this panel is entirely of women, and I wondered if you could touch on the role of women in your communities and what that means in the global kind of climate action fight.
Yes, such a privilege for me to be sitting here with all of you. So who wants to take a go at that, the role of women in your own communities and in this work? Alice, you want to go first? Yeah.
Olha, para que essa mesa se formasse aqui, eu tenho certeza de que a gente lutou muito para que isso acontecesse. Infelizmente, é uma realidade, né? As mulheres indígenas que estão ativas no movimento, como ativistas principalmente, sofrem muito com a violência e com as ameaças, assim. E eu não estou falando só do Brasil.
You can be sure that for us women to be here today has been a lot of struggle, and it's something you are fighting daily also to take your place and to be part of this movement. And I know that it's really difficult for us women in Brazil, but I'm sure it's the same for a lot of indigenous people, for women to take their place.
E eu fico muito orgulhosa de poder dividir essa mesa com as meninas. E principalmente porque, assim, uma coisa que a gente tem muito presente no meu povo é dizer que se o nosso povo resistiu, houve uma resistência muito maior por parte das nossas mulheres. Porque nós somos o útero, somos as matriarcas do nosso movimento.
And I'm very proud to be here today with other women. And if we need to struggle a lot to defend our territory, you can be sure that it's even more difficult to be a woman to struggle for that, because we are suffering a lot of oppression, but we have the strength from the uterus, and we need to come back to our matriarchal organization as well.
E essa história não pode ser escrita sem nós, é a nossa presença. Nós que sentimos maior impacto de tudo isso, né? Afinal, somos nós, as mulheres indígenas, que deixam de frequentar as escolas, que existem outras lutas para se lutar também, e às vezes a gente abre mão das nossas próprias vidas para isso. Então, são essas relações.
And this history wouldn't be written without us, because at the end we are also fighting a lot for the education in the community, and we are following many kind of fights, and we have to let sometimes a bit of personal life to struggle for the community and for the well-being of our people.
Right. I wonder if one other of you might like to comment, including maybe on your own journey as a female leader in your community. Who wants to take that?
Well,
oh, yes, and then,
okay.
Yep, go Hindou and then Nina. We'll hear from both.
Well, let me share with you, as coming from impacted communities with drought and floods. So at the end of the day, you get men that leave the communities to go to the big cities to get another job, or they jump to another city or another city. Sometimes they come back after months and months. Sometimes maybe not. Right. So those who are left behind are those indigenous women. And that's also, it is my inspiration. They are my hero. Because those women, with just them hands, they innovate. They know where to find food for all the communities. They are not eager to just to think about themselves. It's the most case of the man, sorry for that. They are our dad, husband, and all. But they think for all the communities. They are the one who taking care of all the children, all the peoples, for the food, for the medicine, for everything. And at that time, they become more innovators because they understand better the nature. So I am working on the traditional knowledge, collecting the traditional knowledge of my communities to help them build the resilience. And the women knowledge are more details than man knowledge. So they can predict to you if it's going to be raining in the next 1 hour, even there is no cloud, because they know how to observe the little ant. And that one, man do not have time to do it. So women do have the time to observe the little ant, or to observe just the dung, to observe the flowers. So women play a very big role on the resilience and adaptation of my communities. And it is the same case in many other indigenous communities, because I can also witness the grandma in the Pacific where there is a big hurricane. They are the ones who know where they can get fresh water for their families, where to get food for their families. So women play really a big role in this climate fight.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love that. Nina, over to you.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Good. Well, I can speak from my experience. I've been working with indigenous women of different nations in the Ecuador and Amazon for the past years. Indigenous, leaders, mothers, grandmothers, young women, girls, and who all in some way are creating change, who all in some way are learning or leading their communities and their families forward. And I think in general, indigenous women have, well, at least in my community, a very special relationship to the earth. And that is seen through the way that we plant the seeds, the way that we take care of the plants, of the food, medicinal plants, the way that indigenous women sing, the way that indigenous women sing for healing, for love, for union, for strength, for protection. I have seen what, at least in my community, when the oil companies came, Indigenous, the women in my community were the ones that said, no, we're not going to allow this. And we're going to organize peacefully. And there were actually some men in my community that were like, but maybe this is good, maybe this will bring, better education for our children and things like this. And the women literally said, if you accept the oil companies, we'll get a divorce. We'll separate. And so I've seen women throughout my life, just starting with my grandmother, my aunt, my mother, and all the women in my community, leading their communities, creating change, healing their communities, standing up against big corporations without fear. And I think that is crucial. Like when we're speaking about climate change, when we're speaking about extractivism, it is crucial to recognize the role of Indigenous women, in the fight against extractive industries, making sure that fossil fuels are kept in the ground, making sure of finding local solutions, of healing their families and their communities. We need to acknowledge that. We also need to be aware of the fact that not only do Indigenous women experience violence as Indigenous, but also as women, or as, people of color, or because they don't speak the official language of the country, which in Ecuador is Spanish. So we need to understand all the different struggles that Indigenous women carry.
Yes. Thank you very. Oh, sorry. Finish.
The resilience within that.
Thank you, Nina. So let's get a couple more questions from the audience, please. Yes, hands up. There we go. Maybe the one behind and then the one in front. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Hindou. Hi, Nina. I'm a colleague of these beautiful women. I just finished a panel here a moment ago, or before this one, around nature-based solutions. And I just heard Nina reference local, regional solutions, and the need to have those uplifted and invested in. I heard Hindou speak about direct finance into local, place-based solutions. And I think our audience here would really appreciate, because I know you both are experts on this, I think we'd appreciate you all to break down the concept of false solutions and how they're impacting both of your communities, and how false solutions such as carbon offsetting, carbon neutrality, net zero, so-called nature-based solutions are actually displacing your peoples and perpetuating the colonization of your land. So I'm just curious to hear from either of you or both of you about these so-called solutions, and if you could pull the veil from these, so-called solutions that are being promoted at COP26.
Great, and just before we go to the answer, I'm going to collect the one more question in front so that we can use this last time. There was somebody else with their hand up. There we go. Who is it? Okay.
Well, I want to thank you, everybody, for bringing such a great panel here. I come from Bolivia, and what I see in my country is that many indigenous youth is stopping to acknowledge their identity as indigenous people because of the discrimination, the lack of opportunities, and the displacement. So my question is, what made you stick to your root of indigenous identity? What was the key for you to be so committed to your land and to your ancestry? Because I would like to know what can we replicate so our youths are still proud to be indigenous.
Wonderful, thank you. So two great questions. One on the difference between false and real solutions, and one on how your own choices and how you keep youth in your community doing this kind of work. Who wants to take what? Cassidy, would you like to respond to one of those, or both
I
of
can
those?
take the second one.
Go for it, yes.
Okay, from what I've seen, those youth who are very engaged in their culture, those are the ones who find their identity and really speak up for it when there is injustice. So I would say, get them out there, get them into the land, get them engaged with culture and with their elders. There's so much knowledge with the elders, and yeah, that's what I would say. Get them engaged in their culture and their land.
Wonderful. Alice, do you want to just comment on the youth in your community?
Essa é uma coisa que aconteceu muito no Brasil há alguns anos atrás. A gente precisou se esconder para que as pessoas aceitassem os povos indígenas depois. Foi um processo de resistência, mas que hoje assim, é muito forte, essa retomada de identidade.
And this happened a lot in Brazil as well. We needed, at the beginning, we feel that we needed to hide ourselves, but today we are taking back our identity, and we have a big movement at the young people in Brazil to go back to our roots and be proud of being indigenous.
Então, nesse período, nós perdemos até a nossa língua, né? Ela foi escondida para que as pessoas não julgassem e não fizessem... porque existia muita violência naquela época, então isso era uma coisa muito séria. As pessoas falarem uma língua indígena era considerado uma coisa muito ruim. Era preciso aprender o português para ser civilizado. E isso aconteceu com o meu povo. E hoje eu sou uma das gerações que já fala a língua, mas ainda existe um processo muito lento de retomada linguística e cultural.
For example, our people stopped to talk our native language. My mother, for example, she don't talk our native language. And we lose that for a lot of time. And I have the opportunity today because I really can speak the language, but it's not something that everybody has the access to.
One last thought, and then I'm going to pass, yeah.
Por muito tempo, a gente teve vergonha de ser indígena, porque a sociedade nos ensinou isso, né? A colonização coloca que isso era uma coisa feia, uma coisa ruim, uma pessoa sem rei, sem lei, sem alma, né? E aí, quando a gente começa a entender que existe beleza nisso e que precisa existir autoestima e coragem de ser quem a gente volta para onde a gente veio, né? Volta essa relação com a ancestralidade, essa ligação que a gente tem com o que é nosso.
And for a lot of time we feel ashamed of being indigenous, but today we really realize all the beauty and all the connections that we have with the nature and all the value of that, and we are getting each day more connected, and we really want to come back to our auto-estimate and to self-evaluation, because we believe that we have a lot.
Thank you very much. So Nina and then Hindou, just a final minute from each of you in response to either of those questions, maybe especially the false versus real solutions. Nina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very important question. I think the whole false solution, carbon market conversation is an extremely important conversation to have. But just to sort of go to a few very concrete things, is that often first of all, carbon offsetting does not work. You cannot offset carbon emissions. When they're out there in the atmosphere, they're there. You can't put them back in by, paying extra money on your flight. You can't put it back there by paying extra money to a government that is criminalizing and persecuting land defenders that are protecting those very forests that they're claiming are offsetting carbon emissions. The other thing is that very often these projects are created on indigenous lands without consulting indigenous peoples. And as a result, indigenous peoples in many areas, for example, in Ecuador, in Peru, their rights as indigenous peoples are limited within their own territories. Their ability, to hunt, to fish, to, cut down certain trees for creating, their houses or tools, which is a harmonious way to live in the land that they have been living at in generations.
Nina, I'm going to ask you for one more point, and then I'm going to pass to Hindou, simply because we're short on time. I know this is a super important topic, but yeah.
But no, go ahead, Hindou. I think this is the experience that I have in South America, but I'm sure that Hindou can fill out on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to add to what my sister Nina said, firstly, what is nature-based solutions? Because with Nina, we discussed a lot about that. As indigenous peoples, it is just a new concept for the peoples, but for us, it is our way of living for thousands of years. So there is no need to put it as a brand and then use it to do like greenwashing. One of the examples is in Kenya, they just put like a big power plant for the electricity, but they kicked out the communities. I visited them, not somebody told me. They kicked them out from their land to put just the solar to say it is the electricity for the peoples. And they did it where? Interesting, in a national park. So are we going to destroy the national park, displace the communities, and to put the solution, say like it is a renewable energy as a solution? So those are the first solutions, and we have to denunciate this one. Of course, the nature-based solution is the way of living of indigenous peoples, full stop. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. What a privilege to be on this panel. Thank you, audience, for joining us. We wish you all tremendous success with your ongoing work, and thank you for everything you're doing for this beautiful planet that we share.
Thank you,
ladies. Okay.